I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed, a geriatric physician who spent more than 25 years helping older adults rebuild the deep, steady sleep that aging quietly erodes. So let me ask you something directly. Have your nights started to feel different? Do you fall asleep only to wake hours later? Does your sleep feel thin, fragile, and easy to break? Do you open your eyes at 2 or 3 a.m. with a mind that's awake long before your body's ready? If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And it's not simply getting older. What I see in my clinic every day is this. Your sleep isn't failing. Your biochemistry is shifting. After 60, four core systems begin to drift out of sync. Digestion, neuroinflammation, serotonin production, and natural melatonin release. When even one of these slips, the night becomes unpredictable. But here's the part most people never expect. Four very familiar fruits, the kind you bought your entire life, directly support these four pathways. No supplements, no exotic superfoods, no pills. Just the right fruit at the right time, and the body begins to find its rhythm again. Tonight, I'll walk you through all four. And the final one is the strongest, the one that reinforces natural melatonin and holds your sleep together through the entire night. Before we go on, like, share, and comment where your sleep breaks most often. It helps more adults over 60 find the guidance they've been missing. Number 4, Pears. For many adults over 60, the night breaks not because of stress or thoughts, but because of the digestive system. A little bloating after dinner, a pressure under the ribs, the lingering warmth of acid that wasn't there years ago. These small discomforts become far louder at night. And when they activate the vagus nerve, the message that reaches the brain is simple. Wake up. This is why so many older adults find themselves opening their eyes between 2 and 4 a.m. Even on nights when everything feels quiet. Pears help because they calm this exact pathway. Their soluble pectin is gentle in a way most fibers are not. It doesn't swell, and it doesn't slow the gut further. Instead, it coats and soothes the lining of the stomach and intestines, reducing the irritation that keeps the vagus nerve active long after dinner. And because pears are naturally low in acidity, they don't trigger the burning or reflux-like tension that makes the first sleep cycle so fragile. There is also a timing advantage unique to pears. As we age, gastric emptying slows, meaning food sits in the stomach longer. This prolongs distension, a major driver of nighttime awakenings. A small serving of pear after dinner helps the stomach finish its work earlier in the evening, so that the gut's internal signals quiet down right as the brain is trying to enter deep sleep. Clinical sleep labs that study older adults have documented a consistent pattern. When late evening digestive load is reduced, early morning awakenings drop dramatically. Not because the fruit induces sleep, but because a calmer gut sends far fewer activating signals up the vagus nerve. And among whole food sources of soluble fiber, low-acid fruits like pears are uniquely well tolerated. They calm the system without triggering the motility spikes that often fragment sleep. I saw this clearly with Evelyn, 68, who told me she woke almost every night around 2:30 a.m. She wasn't anxious. She wasn't in pain. She simply felt her body switch on from the inside. We added half a pear about an hour after dinner. Within a week, her nights held together. The early morning awakenings softened, then disappeared. Not because the pear made her sleepy, but because it quieted the signal that kept pulling her out of sleep. Here is how to use this method so it works with your biology instead of against it. Eat a small portion of pear, half a large fruit or a cup of soft slices, about 45 to 90 minutes after dinner. Not immediately afterward, and not right before bed. This window allows digestion to settle and prevents the stomach from sending mixed signals as the night begins. If your digestion is strong, a spoonful of plain yogurt alongside the pear can enhance the soothing effect. If you take medications in the evening, give yourself a little space. Soluble fiber can slow absorption in some older adults, so leave roughly an hour between the fruit and your pills. And if your digestion is very sensitive, start small and increase slowly. This method sits here at number 4 because it protects the first stretch of the night, the foundation on which everything else rests. When the gut is calm, the vagus nerve quiets, And when that nerve quiets, the brain can finally transition into sleep without being pulled back to full alertness. And once this early stability is in place, the method that follows works on something deeper, the brain's own ability to enter and hold deep sleep. Number 3, berries. Deep sleep doesn't disappear suddenly. It thins out. It becomes lighter, shallower, easier to interrupt. And for many adults over 60, the brain simply doesn't sink into those restorative stages the way it once did. You fall asleep, but you hover. You drift on the surface of sleep instead of dropping into it. You dream more, turn more, and wake to even the smallest shift inside your body. This pattern is almost always tied to one thing: neuroinflammation. Not the kind you feel as pain, not the kind that sends you to a doctor. This is low-grade, age-linked inflammation inside the brain that keeps the nervous system slightly too alert. During the day, it shows up as mental fatigue or slower focus. At night, it blocks the transition into slow-wave sleep, the deepest, most restorative stage. Berries help because they target this exact obstacle. Their rich anthocyanins, the pigments that give them their deep blue, purple, or red color, can cross the blood-brain barrier, something most plant compounds cannot do. Once inside, they help quiet inflammatory signaling and reduce the oxidative stress that accumulates with age. That calming effect allows the brain's electrical rhythms to settle, the ones responsible for producing the slow, high-amplitude waves that define deep sleep. There's another mechanism that matters here: BDNF, a growth factor that supports neuron repair and communication between sleep-critical regions like the hippocampus and thalamus. BDNF naturally declines with age, which is one reason deep sleep shrinks over the decades. Anthocyanins gently encourage BDNF activity, helping the brain rebuild some of the networks that deep sleep relies on. It's not dramatic, but it's meaningful, especially for older adults whose sleep has felt shallow for years. Geriatric sleep labs that evaluate EEG patterns in older adults consistently observe the same trend. When neuroinflammation is reduced, the brain spends more time in slow-wave sleep and is less likely to prematurely shift back into lighter stages. This doesn't knock you out. It restores the brain's ability to enter deep sleep, something supplements often fail to do because they don't address the underlying barrier. I saw this clearly in one of my longtime patients, Harold, 73. He described his nights as broken into chapters: 90 minutes of sleep, a brief awakening, another short stretch, then the same cycle repeating until morning. Nothing was medically wrong. His brain just wouldn't stay down. We introduced a simple change: half a cup of berries in the early evening, about 1 to 2 hours before bed. Not as a dessert, but as a quiet support for his nighttime chemistry. 3 weeks later, he told me, "I don't know when it happened, but my nights finally feel heavier again." His EEG later reflected the same thing: more consistent, slow-wave activity and longer unbroken cycles. Here's how to use berries properly so the effect aligns with your biology. Have them in the early evening, not right before bed. That 1 to 2 hour window lets the anthocyanins take effect without stimulating digestion too close to the night. Half a cup is enough for most older adults. A full cup is perfectly fine if your gut handles fiber well. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, any deeply colored berry works. If you prefer a more substantial snack, a spoonful of Greek yogurt can make the release of these compounds more stable. Just a few caution points. Avoid berries with added sugar, as the spikes can unsettle the nervous system. And if you have IBS or a very sensitive gut, start with a smaller portion to see how your body adapts. This method ranks above digestive support because it works on the brain itself, reducing the internal noise that keeps deep sleep out of reach. And once the brain begins to regain that stability, the next fruit strengthens the chemistry that helps you fall asleep smoothly in the first place. Number 2, pineapple, serotonin. Pathway support. Falling asleep is its own kind of chemistry. It isn't about exhaustion, and it isn't simply about feeling tired enough. For adults over 60, the real challenge begins earlier in the evening, when the brain struggles to generate the serotonin it needs to convert into melatonin later at night. That missing step is why many older adults lie in bed feeling ready to sleep, but unable to cross that final threshold. Pineapple helps because it feeds this exact pathway. Unlike most fruits, pineapple contains measurable amounts of natural serotonin, along with vitamin B6, a cofactor your brain uses to convert tryptophan into more serotonin. And when serotonin is steady through the evening, the body can create melatonin more naturally, following its own rhythm instead of relying on supplements that spike and crash. This is why so many seniors describe the same pattern. They can't settle at the beginning of the night. Their body feels restless even while their mind is calm. Or they finally fall asleep, only to wake after the first hour because melatonin never reached a stable level. Supporting serotonin early helps prevent that fragile first cycle where sleep either holds or falls apart. There's a physiological reason pineapple works well for older adults. As we age, melatonin production doesn't just decrease in volume, it becomes inconsistent. Some nights your body makes enough to get you through the first 3 hours. Other nights it barely makes enough to help you fall asleep at all. By strengthening the upstream chemistry, serotonin, you're giving your brain the material it needs to create a smoother, more predictable nighttime signal. Research on serotonin-rich fruits has shown improvements in sleep efficiency, especially in individuals with age-related melatonin decline. The effect is modest but consistent. Shorter sleep onset times, fewer early night interruptions, and a calmer transition into the first deep sleep cycle. What matters is not that the fruit makes you sleepy, but that it supports the chemistry your brain has been struggling to produce on its own. I saw this clearly in someone I worked with recently, Leonard, 72. He told me he had no trouble staying asleep once he got there, but the struggle was getting into sleep in the first place. He lay awake every night for 40 minutes, sometimes longer, waiting for his body to cooperate. We added a small serving of pineapple about an hour before bed, not a large portion, not a dessert, just enough to support his serotonin pathway. Within 10 days, his sleep onset shortened from almost an hour to 15 minutes. He wasn't sedated. He was simply finally crossing the threshold his brain had been missing. Here's how to use pineapple properly. Have it about 60 minutes before bed, not immediately before lying down. Half a cup is enough for most adults. Even a few soft chunks can work if your digestion is sensitive. If you have reflux, warming, or lightly steaming the pineapple can make it gentler without reducing its effect on serotonin. There are a few cautions. Avoid large portions. The natural sugars can be stimulating in excess. And if you're managing blood sugar, choose ripe pineapple in small amounts so the digestion is smoother. This is a supportive food, not a sedative. It works by guiding your chemistry, not by forcing sleep. This method ranks just below the final fruit because it stabilizes the beginning of your night, the moment when your body decides whether sleep will come easily or fight you. And once your serotonin pathway begins firing the way it should, the last fruit strengthens the deepest part of your architecture, the melatonin signal that holds the entire night together. Number 1. Tart cherries. Natural melatonin continuity method. For most adults over 60, the hardest part of sleep isn't falling asleep, it's staying asleep. You drift off, but somewhere after midnight, the night breaks. You wake at 2, maybe 3 a.m. Not because of noise, not because of stress, but because the body's natural melatonin curve collapses too early. Sleep that should have lasted 7 hours barely holds for 3 or 4. Tart cherries help because they reinforce the architecture that keeps sleep continuous. And yes, it's tart cherries again. I mention them often on this channel, and I don't mind repeating it, because very few natural foods support sleep stability in older adults as reliably and as consistently as this one. Not through synthetic spikes, not through forced sedation, but through a slow, natural rise of melatonin, supported by the fruit's own bioactive compounds. This is the form of melatonin your brain recognizes, the kind that follows a curve, not a cliff. What makes tart cherries unique is not just their melatonin content, it's the combination of melatonin plus anthocyanins, which calm neuroinflammation and reduce the microsignals that push the brain out of deeper stages. Those two pathways, hormonal and anti-inflammatory, work together in a way supplements simply can't replicate. As adults age, nighttime melatonin doesn't just decline, it becomes inconsistent. Some nights you produce enough to reach morning, other nights the signal collapses halfway through the night, leaving the brain unanchored. Tart cherries strengthen that signal, giving the brain a more reliable arc, one that carries through the vulnerable 2 to 4 a.m. window where so many older adults wake. Sleep centers that monitor melatonin patterns in seniors have observed something striking. When natural melatonin is supported through food rather than supplements, sleep continuity improves more smoothly. There's less overshooting, less crashing, and a greater chance of the body maintaining stable sleep cycles without forcing the system. It's subtle but powerful, a kind of biological guidance rather than a push. I saw this with Marjorie, 74, a retired teacher who told me she felt like sleep just ran out halfway through the night. She could fall asleep easily, but staying asleep felt impossible. We added tart cherries late in the evening, a small glass of unsweetened juice about 45 minutes before bed. 2 weeks later, she said something I hear often. My sleep doesn't feel perfect, but it finally feels held again. Her night wasn't breaking in the middle anymore. She was sleeping through, or close to it, for the first time in years. Here's how to use tart cherries correctly. Have a small serving, about 3 to 4 ounces of unsweetened juice or a cup of fresh fruit, roughly 45 minutes before bed. Not too early, not too late. This timing mirrors the body's natural melatonin slope, giving your system a nudge exactly when the signal is supposed to rise. If you're sensitive to sugar, choose unsweetened juice or reduce the portion slightly. The effect comes from the compounds, not the sweetness. A gentle caution: if you have blood sugar concerns, start small and watch how your body responds. And if your digestion is delicate, fresh cherries may be gentler than juice. This method sits at the top not because it puts you to sleep faster, but because it strengthens the entire night. The transitions, the depth, the continuity, the ability to stay asleep until morning without drifting upward into wakefulness. It supports the architecture of sleep itself, the blueprint your brain has been trying to hold on to for decades. And when that architecture begins to restore, mornings feel different, clearer, quieter, and finally rested again. When you combine these fruits with the right timing, the effect is far stronger than using any one of them randomly. Sleep after 60 depends on rhythm, not quantity, and what you do in the hours before bed often matters more than what you do at bedtime itself. So here's a simple, steady plan that aligns each fruit with the biology it supports. Begin in the late afternoon. This is when the brain naturally starts preparing for its evening slowdown, and it's the window where neuroinflammation can quietly disrupt the shift into rest. A small serving of berries during this time, around 4 to 6 p.m., gives their anthocyanins enough time to reach the brain and support the stability of slow-wave sleep later that night. Think of it as preparing the ground before darkness arrives. After dinner, once digestion has had a moment to begin its work, that's when pears become most effective. A small serving 45 to 90 minutes after your meal helps the gut settle before the night begins. This reduces the internal pressure and vagal signaling that so often wake older adults between 2 and 4 a.m. When the gut is calm early, the night holds together more easily. As the evening quiets, give your serotonin pathway the support it needs with pineapple. Have it about an hour before bed. This helps your brain generate a steady supply of serotonin, the ingredient it must convert into melatonin later in the night. For many older adults, this one step softens the restless, unsettled feeling that often appears right before sleep. Then, as bedtime approaches, finish with tart cherries. A small portion, about 45 minutes before sleep, mirrors the body's natural melatonin rise, reinforcing the arc your brain is meant to follow. This is what carries you through the vulnerable early morning hours when melatonin levels often collapse. You don't need all 4 fruits every day. Most of my patients start with 2, sometimes 3, depending on where their night breaks. But give each method time. 10 to 14 days is a realistic window to see genuine changes. Sleep chemistry doesn't shift overnight, but it responds consistently to the right cues. And once you find the combination that steadies your night, the body begins to remember the deeper rhythm it's been missing. What matters most isn't memorizing all the details. It's understanding that your sleep is not random and it's not disappearing. It's responding to the same biology that's been guiding it your entire life. And when you support that biology in the right places, even gently, the night begins to change. Many adults over 60 tell me they assumed nothing could improve, that lighter sleep was simply the cost of aging. But the moment they match their habits to the way their body now works, their nights start to feel steadier. Sometimes for the first time in years. It doesn't require dramatic changes, just small inputs your brain already knows how to use. If something in this video felt true to your experience, tell me in the comments which fruit you want to try tonight. Your answers help me understand what you're struggling with and what I should teach next. And if you want more calm, science-based guidance made specifically for older adults, tap like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel reach the people who need it most. Your nights can become whole again, and I'll be here to walk you through each step.